Hello, all.
Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
All right, there we go.
There we are. Hello, hello. Thank you guys for joining us. So today on Under the Cover with Red, we're going to be diving under the cover of The Roots Grow into the Earth by Bert Lechner, who's going to be joining us today. And for those of you who aren't aware, The Roots Grow into the Earth is a collection of short horror stories, and they are phenomenal. If any of you are familiar with the series Are You Afraid of the Dark, or if you've read that when you were younger, then you're going to absolutely love these. These are by far the adult version of them, and some of them are so relatable to like everyday instances, tricks that play into our mind, things like that. So welcome everybody, welcome Bert. Thank you for being here with us today, and let's do this. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad there's an opportunity to take a look at my book.
Yeah, absolutely. So what got you into writing horror? Is that something that you've always liked, or did you just kind of suddenly wake up one day and say, I'm gonna put together these amazing horror stories?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Like, I'm a 90s kid. We grew up with like VHS store down the road, and like when I was like 4 or 5, we would be going in there to look at movies, and I was always drawn to the horror section and looking at the back covers of like Nightmare Before Elm Street and Return of the Living Dead, all those old like 80s, 70s classic horror movies,
Oh yeah.
and like never watched them. I was too scared to watch them until like I can only say just like it just clicked like in like when I was in my late 20s, and like I was going through a hard time, and I started watching horror movies and just watched way too many in the span of like a year. Got totally inundated. I had been writing before that and had been more sort of classical science fiction and fantasy, and just like starting to watch those horror films, and then just my experiences at the time just sent me diving straight into just like full on writing horror, pretty much.
That's awesome. See, I love it because I'm a total horror buff. Like I was raised by old school grandparents. So I grew up watching the Sci-Fi Channel. The Crypt Keeper was my bedtime stories. And I'm a total 90s kid too. So the Nightmare on Elm Street, I mean Freddy versus Jason, all of those, you know what I mean? Like so I'm here for it. And so to be able to dive, and this has kind of been my first indie author horror book too. That's been like completely and utterly horror, and it's so morbidly fascinating that I love it. It's got, what is it? I believe is there 10 or 12 different
Uh,
stories throughout the book?
it's 9 stories. 7 of them are short stories, and then 2 of them are novelettes. And just yeah, I in the collection I published them out of order, just for pacing purposes. But it's like yeah, the 3 larger works were written first, back in like June through November last year, and then the other 6 were written this year.
Okay, cool. And then it's kind of got puzzled together into one book.
Yeah, yeah, they were like
Yeah,
I wanted to
awesome.
do spacing, and then there were some stories that I wrote which are secret follow-ups to the first big 3, that I just had to put in the right places.
That's awesome. No, I love it. And I love I mean, you went out there and you put your work into doing this too. One of my absolute favorites, I think actually by far my favorite short story in the collection of The Roots Grow into the Earth is Morning. And not like oh sunshiny it's morning, but like death mourning.
Yeah.
And there's an excerpt in the middle of this short story that, if you don't mind, I'd love to read it because it's one of those kind of makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end, and you kind of have to sit back. It made me kind of sit back and take a deep breath, and I was like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah, go for it. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, awesome. The kneeled figure rocked before her, their agony a flower, a beacon of emotion in the bleak world around them. Little remained of their clothes, or their flesh, only ancient remnants spared of the wastes of time by mere luck, held together by fragments of the hardiest threads and tenacious strands of sinew. And grief. Some odd, dream-logic sense of intuition told her that grief alone remained of whatever person they had once been. Whoa.
Yeah. Um,
That's deep. Like that, it's you know what I mean. So it's scary. It's got a creepy edge to it, but at the same time, that's really taken a deep dive into some subconscious thoughts there.
yeah, and it's yeah, a lot of the later short stories, particular like Morning and His Castle Crumbles, and a little bit in like The Wall, were are very much sort of unintentionally inspired by sort of my experiences processing trauma from
Yeah,
just having a lot of challenges that I've gone over for like the past 30 years. And so that sort of unintentionally came out in those. And then I just kind of, when I noticed it, I started leaning into it because, like trauma is very horrific and
absolutely.
good thing to throw in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you experienced that trauma and was able to overcome it through writing, 'cause, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people, it's hard to express that. It's hard to find any sort of means of expressing the things that we've been through or the emotions that we're feeling. So to be able to do that in a way that is healing for you, but kind of inspiring for other people. I guess you could say, because I find it very inspiring. You know what I mean, and especially the way that you were able to put kind of such a morbid twist on some of your experiences. Because, as you said, trauma that we deal with is absolutely by no means easy to go through, whatever trauma it is. I feel like it's always morbid. So to be able, you expressed it in a way that is honest. You know what I mean? You didn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I'll admit, some of those stories were extremely hard to write, and even though they were very short, they took me like months to get through. So yeah, it can be tough, but like if anybody's going through that right now, it's yeah, it over time it does get a little easier. So just
Absolutely,
hold
yeah.
in there.
Absolutely. And kudos to you for being able to do that. You know what I mean? Because honestly, everybody deserves their. Oh, give me just 1 second. I am so sorry. I'm going to have to pop out for just one split second.
But you're all good.
Hello. Hey, hold on just 1 second.
No problem.
Trying to figure out how to get it paused here.
I don't know how it works. I've never been live before.
Hey, are you done working for the day? All right, I love you. I'll call you in a little bit. I am so sorry about that. My apologies.
It's,
my,
it's all
my
good.
husband
Things
is working
happen.
out of town at the moment, and he just
Yeah.
called real quick. I was like, oh,
No, that's
no,
all
but
good. I'm half expecting my
apologies.
cats to interrupt at any moment and just like start screaming. So
I've seen that you have a cat too, and I love that. I have two little baby kitties, and
oh
we actually took them both in at the same time when they were kittens. They were fostered, and they're insane. They're absolutely insane. If to say that they don't run the house is just pretending ignorance.
Oh yeah, no, I've got two, and they're my writing assistants and my writing bane simultaneously. So it's great to have those extra hands around the desk.
Okay, so and then we'll bounce back because
Yeah,
I'm
bouncing
so sorry
back.
about that interruption. I hate when that happens. I feel so terrible when that happens.
It's all good.
Okay, so another one of the amazing miraculous short stories that is in this collection that I fell in love with was White Noise.
Oh,
Um, would you like to have the honor of diving in and you know what I mean, kind of giving us a run through of what White Noise is about?
oh yeah. So I can. So white noise is one of the I think three or four short stories in that collection that were inspired by like Instagram horror prompt like things. So the other ones were What Lies in the Icy Soil, Morning, and the Orchestra. Those three were all just like, write a story about icy or morning or orchestras. And this one was about buzz. And I had been starting to get a little bit more like tinnitus at the time from my hearing, like that buzzing. And so that was an
Mhm.
inspiration for just making this story about a guy just trying to do his darn dishes, and this noise just starts to come out from nowhere, and then just taking that idea of a noise that you can't get out of your head and just ramping it up just to levels that you might not expect it to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't want to give too much of a spoiler away, but reading through this story, like, I can imagine in my mind, this man just standing over top of his sink and all of a sudden, like, opening his mouth to scream and just, like,
Yeah,
that's terrifying because that's like the fear, you know what I mean? If like sleeping and something were to crawl, ooh, ooh.
yeah. I think that one. I think that one. Like, if there are any triggers, like I think that one probably has a severe trypophobia warning. Um, but
If you have
yeah,
any fear of winged insects or you know what I mean, if you can't bear to read or imagine something of an insect variety coming out of you explosively, I don't know if I would read White Noise.
yeah, yeah. So that one was actually also just that was a very difficult one to write, just because it's in a very enclosed space and it's about one sensation.
Yeah.
So it was yeah, so that one took a very long time, and I wrote, like, I was writing that in tandem with other stories and just jumping back and forth between them so that I could like try to like figure out what the hell was going on with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The end of that one. Do you mind if I read a little bit of it?
Yeah, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So it's just one little tiny paragraph from it, and then I promise I won't throw any more out there. Um, so he screamed one final agonized, terrified scream, a thick stream of sharp wings billowing from his throat before his consciousness failed him, his body evaporating into a droning mist, and then silence. Like
Yeah,
that's absolutely terrifying.
yeah, that was hard to write. That was I like maybe other, if there's horror writers in the audience here, it's like there's the fine line. Like, the two things that make it difficult to write are, like, one, like, how do I describe this perfectly, and two, do I actually want to write this at all? Like, do I want to commit this horrific thing to paper, you know?
I'm so glad you did though.
So yeah, it's worth it in the end, but there is that, like, hmm sort of.
And I know that from a lot of writers and authors that I've spoke to, you know what I mean, like some of the things that you describe, you have to imagine what you were putting down in the paper. So if you can't, you know what I mean, if you can't picture your own descriptions in your mind and create these imaginative scenarios, then how can you expect your readers to? So I can imagine some of the things that you had to sit down, you know what I mean, in the dark and just kind of mull over and think about in order to put these words to paper. It's almost insanity inducing, so I commend you for it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's yeah, a lot of I do try my best sort of to sort of leverage my sort of my life experience as an autistic person and my own hypersensitivities in writing. And so I do like to just try and like make them as hypersensitive as possible just when I'm describing things.
It shows. It absolutely shows. This is probably one of the most descriptive horror books as far as some of the stories that are in here goes. So if you can't read through these stories that he's put into The Roots Grow into the Earth and put yourself in these horrifying situations, then I don't. You must not have a very creative imagination because it's not hard. It's not difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did very well. So what was your favorite out of all nine of them that you've got down in here? What was your absolute favorite to sit down and write?
Okay, so to sit down and write, I think that's a very I would classify it as maybe break it down to three. So I think the easiest one to write was Interstate. That had the clearest vision, the most forward direction. It was the simplest, and so it came out very quickly. And I don't want to spoil the ending of that one, but the ending was the only part that gave me pause and just like I did honestly like cry my way through writing the end of it. My favorite one to write though would probably be the orchestra, which it was short and sweet. I think it's one of the two most graphic of them, which is sort of fun in a very morbid way to do. And it included a entity, Marotha, that I wanted to put on paper for a bit. And I don't know if you looked at the copyright page of my book, but like in the bottom of that, I put a little Easter egg about Marotha in there.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay, I saw that. Yeah. But yeah, so I think my like if we're talking just like favorite, I think my favorite would be the last one, His Castle Crumbles, just because that was a very personal story and like the closest to like a self-insert that I've had so far, where it's just somebody not understanding what the heck is happening as like their world is like falling apart around them and the lengths they have to go to appease this thing in their life. So it's like that was the hardest one to write and like my favorite just because of its closeness.
You can tell that you put a lot more. I don't want to say a lot more, but I guess you felt more genuine, you know what I mean, towards his castle crumbles because you can it shows within the story. It like you said, it's a more relatable story. It's a little bit more intense than some of the other ones in it. It's got kind of a more realism sort of spin on it. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's imagining your entire life falling apart. You know what I mean? Everything around you, you've lost
Yeah,
everything that you had, everything you thought you had is just gone one day. And what do you do with that?
yeah,
Um,
and that
and I
yeah
think
that
that's
was
something a
also
lot of people can relate to.
yeah that was also my first time ever writing anything in like present tense. And so like when I started writing it, I originally wrote it in third person past tense like everything else. But I decided to experiment with present tense and I just couldn't go back just because like I feel like present tense now that I've tried it, it really does like have a very different feel to it. Like,
It does.
yeah, different tug. That is really
Yeah,
cool.
it definitely does. I'd imagine it's probably a little, you mean a little bit different, kind of a more foreign sort of feeling switching, you know what I mean, after something that you've been used to for so long.
Yeah, and yeah, there were definitely in the editing phase. I absolutely like noticed times in that where I had accidentally fallen back to the other tense and had to fix that. But it was really fun.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, you did very well, regardless. Is this isn't your very first horror novel, is it? You have another one or no?
So that's complicated, sort of. But I'll go over like sort. I guess the inception of this one. It is so the roots grow into the earth is my first ever paperback. So I am sort of counting it as my debut. But the the big three stories in that were originally I wrote them all last year. I published them on Wattpad, and it just they weren't getting traction on Wattpad, so I decided to republish them on Amazon.
Okay.
So you can get Interstate, The Wall, and Joanne's Vault as like standalone a la carte books on Amazon.
Okay.
And yeah, but and then meanwhile, the other six stories I wrote, I put them on Instagram originally, then I moved them to my website, and they're if you go to bertwriteshorror.com, you can actually read six of the nine stories that will be in this collection for free. And I'm
Huh.
not planning on taking them down, but it's just like I wanted to just put them in a paperback too, so that like if you like them on the website, you can see if you like them, and then you can have the paperback on your shelf if you want to. So
Awesome. So you've got the option if you've already read them, then now you can own them.
yeah, exactly. And just want to like
Perfect.
I'm a very new author. This is effectively my first book. I just want as many people to read this madness and terror that I've created as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, and it deserves it. It deserves all the attention that you're trying to put it out there. I know I probably say this in almost every one of my lives, but I don't just, you mean, I don't ask the authors to be on these lives if I don't enjoy their books. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
something worth repeating. You know what I mean? So your book it's just one of those horror books that just kind of cling. It's not cringy in any way. It's not over the top. It's not super gruesome or gory. However, it will have you on the edge of your seat at some points. You know what I mean? And like I kind of said when I messaged you, reading through some of these stories, you might even have to go back and read a couple of them two, three, maybe even four times because you read through it the first time and there's no way that that's what happened. You kind
Yeah.
of have to stop and ask yourself like did I really just read that?
That's well, that's
um,
exactly the reaction I'm hoping for. So that's perfect that it worked. So
I love it and I read a lot. You know, I mean, I'm an avid reader. I probably get through two, three, maybe even four books a week if I'm really pushing myself. You know what I mean? To pile through some of my lists that I've got going on. So to find a book that kind of really sticks with me and draws to me, like some of these stories in here, I feel like no matter how much time passes or how many other books I cram in between, some of these two stories, especially Morning and White Noise, I'm just not, I won't forget. They're going to be two stories that I'm going to remember. And it's kind of I love it because with spooky season approaching, they're just the right type of horror story, you know what I mean, to get you ready for this spooky season. So if any of you that are watching, following along with us today, if you're looking for a good horror book that's going to get you kind of in your nerves and your feels, I wouldn't recommend reading it in the pitch dark maybe because you might start hearing a thing or two. But I
yeah,
definitely
and
recommend it. Like,
yeah, and I my original goal my original goal wasn't to write something approachable. That sounds weird, but like
I get it though.
when I started out, it was just oh yeah, this is going to be really scary. And then I wasn't on Instagram back there. Then I didn't know who Aaron Beauregard was, and I didn't know what like splatterpunk and extreme horror were. So like that stuff I'm too scared to read. I'm terrified of that. So I think The Roots Grow into the Earth is like probably it's pretty I would say it is pretty approachable.
Oh yeah, it's
I
the right
have
middle. It's
yeah.
just the right middle.
Yeah, I have more of like a fantasy background. Like I loved Lord of the Rings and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and like the classic horror books. So I put a lot of fantasy into it. And sometimes I tend to say it's like I wrote fantasy books with horror pacing, or just like horror books with a slash of fantasy to it. And
Well,
like,
there's
yeah,
so many different levels of horror too, kind of like you said, you know what I mean? Because they like you, there's I always clarify it or classify it in like levels 1 through 5. You know,
yeah,
you've got like a mild horror that's kind of like goosebumps. You know, like stories for children. Then you know what I mean. You've got kind of like you go into more of like a 3.5 to a 4 level of spookiness, which is kind of where I would put the roots grow into the earth at. You know what I mean? It's more intense and it's got that morbid fascination spin to it. But it's also relatable in a spooky sort of way that like you kind of have to sit back and think like all right, this could maybe happen.
yeah,
Or what if this really happened? You know what I mean? And then you've got more kind of into the 5s or upwards range where it's just super terrifying. Have to cover your eyes through the whole thing because you can't bear to witness it. Or
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's only a handful of media in the fives I've consumed, and it like Hereditary is like in the film things, and
yeah.
it's like absolutely horrifying, broke me, 5 stars, never watching again. So that thing. But yeah,
So I take it, you know, what I mean, since you know you're obviously into horror, are you mean? I know you said earlier in the live that you kind of didn't really do a deep dive into it until about your 20s, but does that mean now? You mean you would classify yourself as a big horror buff?
oh yeah, yeah. I'm definitely a big horror buff now. It's at the stage where you've watched all the good stuff, and now you have to dumpster dive into like Tubi and Freevee to see if maybe one of those like off-market horror films is actually like a hidden gem sort of
Start diving into
stage.
like the French and the
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't. It probably doesn't come across in the books, but I'm a huge fan of like mystery science theater and riff tracks, like watching the really bad old horror movies that are more funny than scary. I think that'll probably end up coming more in like there's a novelette I'm writing right now, which has a bit more like tongue-in-cheek humor to it, where you might get some of that. But yeah, you can like I do mostly like yeah, just those very dread-filled, slow-paced horror movies, and like the book is very much inspired by me watching things like John Carpenter's The Thing and The Autopsy of Jane Doe and The Taking of Deborah Logan, The
yep,
Ritual. I did a post about it on
I love
Instagram this
it.
morning, so it's like I have joked on more than one occasion that my marketing strategy is entirely inspired by John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. And I don't like serious meaning it, but if it did happen, yeah, that would be pretty. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I would probably, that'd be kind of mind blowing. John Carpenter is one of my favorite. John Carpenter's Vampires. I grew up watching it. I've probably seen the movie 347 times.
Oh man, yeah,
So I
yeah,
said I definitely relate. I'm right. I mean, we're right there side by side. We're walking that line together there, buddy. I'm
yeah,
with you.
yeah. So like yeah, it was yeah. I think I did read a lot of books. I read less now, but I used to read a lot more, and that did give me the writing foundation. But I would argue that like horror movies have a lot more influence on what I write, and like when I'm writing those scenes with a lot of like dread buildup, thinking of I'm often thinking of like scenes from like Autopsy of Jane Doe and like that feeling you get at the back of the neck like
Oh,
when you're watching it, and just trying to put that into words.
yes. No,
So
I get it completely. I totally do. Like I kind of steered away from horror there for a little while, veered out of it. And like I said, I grew up on horror. I mean, like I was read horror books for bedtime stories and watched sci-fi from the time that I could talk.
yeah,
So if you could name any kind of a horror story and or book, and you know what I mean from back then, I've probably seen it or read it, to be honest. So I kind of had to take a little bit of break there for a minute. But diving back into it, this was the perfect because I know we always as adults we're always searching for something that gives you that nostalgic kind of feeling. You know what I mean? It kind of lets you reminisce a little bit. And so when I picked up The Roots Grow into the Earth, I absolutely got that in a way that, like I said, I used to love Are You Afraid of the Dark and you know what I mean stories like that when I was younger. You know what I mean kind of going into like teenage years, and you strive to find books that give you that first time feeling again.
yeah,
And that's what I got out of reading The Roots Grow into the Dark as far as a horror book goes, is it reignited that first time feeling that I got from you know, I mean picking up my very first collection of short horror stories and diving in. So I loved it. I was incredibly grateful that you stumbled into my videos and dropped it in my inbox because
yeah,
I don't know if I would have come across it otherwise. So
yeah.
I'll
No,
consider myself the lucky one here.
no, I feel really lucky too. I was really glad to like actually get to find your profile on this platform because you do such a good job with like lifting up indie authors. And yeah, it's a really great way to go. And like all of us indie authors just need so much help with getting out there often. So yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for that.
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're very welcome. Like I tell all of them, you know, what I mean, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do what I loved. You know, what I mean, I never thought that I would be able to do these interviews or you know what I mean take my little old nothing life and turn it into something that could help at least one person, you know what I mean. So I like to think, and I say this a lot, my followers aren't for me, you know what I mean, like my followers are for you guys. It's anything that I can do to help you guys get your books out there because you're doing the hard work. You've already done the hard work. You've put all of the effort, the blood, sweat, and the tears into getting these books wrote, getting them published, getting them put out there. So whatever I can do to help smooth the process a little bit, I'm here for it. That's all
Yeah.
day.
No, yeah, no, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, and I appreciate you so much. You know, what I mean, I appreciate that you were able to take the time out today to come on here and do this with us. And anything else that I can do along the way. The book it releases October 7th, correct?
Yeah, so it's gotten a little bit more convoluted recently, but so yeah, the full official big release is October 7th. That's when the paperback comes out on as many major platforms and brick and mortar stores as I can get it into. The
Perfect.
big one is, of course, Amazon. If you're more of an ebook person, you can pre-order on Amazon, and that actually just really helps out indie authors in general, just to like get those rankings up, like so that when release day comes up, people will see the book. So, like October 7th is the big day. If you are like an ebook fan and you're not a fan of Amazon, I'm gonna have a whole week of exclusivity for the ebook on a website called Godless,
Nice.
where they're getting my ebook first. You can get it there. Yeah, if you just really don't want to shop with Amazon.
Yeah. And like, will
And
they be
then
able to
yeah,
find the link to that on your page or?
Uh, uh, I've had a hard time getting links on TikTok.
I
But
fight with
yeah,
the same issue.
yeah, you can find me on bertwriteshorror.com. If you just Google me, Bert S. Lechner, you should find most of my stuff in a pretty easily accessible thing. I have a link to my Instagram on my profile, which is my more active platform currently for social media. And you can also find pictures of my cats and my cooking there. And yeah, and so yeah, there are lots of places to reach out. And yeah, I have way too many books in the works out on the horizon. So I think I have a novel coming up, and then I have 7 or 8 smaller works that I'm working on currently, plus
Oh,
six planned ones that I haven't started writing, but I'm brainstorming, including like 3 or 4 novels and things. So I've got a lot of stuff coming out in the future, and like just a hint for that, like the roots grow into the earth. The name of this book is actually part of a prayer, the first part of which is going to be the title of my next novel. So you'll have to wait to hear what the first sentence of this prayer to some unknown god is.
okay.
But yeah, so we've got some fun stuff going in there, and but
Nice.
yeah, Roots Grow into the Earth is coming out October 7th.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's super worth it. It's perfect. The timing couldn't have been more perfect either. With Halloween coming up, I feel like this is the perfect introduction into the season.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh,
yes, those of you who have been following along or are just now jumping in, the roots grow into the earth. As Bert has just mentioned, it will be available in paperback on October 7th. You can pre-order now on Amazon, correct?
I think pre-orders are just for the ebook version. Yeah, I don't know how. I think if you're set on getting the paperback, you'll have to wait till the 7th. But yeah, like I said, like pre-orders for the ebooks really do help out indie authors. So if you
Yeah.
if you're able to, that's a really great help.
Yes, absolutely. And reviews, reviews, reviews. I push that to all of my followers. Anybody that asks it, you mean how they can help support you guys. You mean do the pre-orders, do the reviews. If you sign up for the ARC, make sure that you're responding timely. Authors understand just as much as we do that life happens sometimes. So
Oh
if for
yeah,
whatever reason, you know, what I mean, you're unable to get to the deadline or something, just be open. You know what I mean? Keep your communication open and just be honest. That's
yeah,
always the best policy.
yeah. I do still. I'm keeping arcs open all the way up to the release date, or at least up to the 28th when it comes out on Godless. So if you are interested in leaving reviews and like getting an arc, you can in on my Instagram there's a link tree link to my like website link tree where you can find book funnel link for the arc, and you can also just find it on Book Sirens. So it'll be available on those platforms all the way up till the release date if you want to do that as well.
Yes, yes. I love book funnel. I think book funnel is so incredibly convenient. I was freaking out there for a minute because I had so many arcs and I couldn't. I was like, how am I possibly going to keep track of them all? For those of you who are going to want to do a deep dive into being an arc reader, book funnel it's perfect. You know what I mean? And I don't want to say that it's specifically for indie authors. Is it a specific indie author site?
Uh,
I'm
it
not sure
looks
if
like
it's
you can.
specific.
Yeah, you can. I think you can pretty much set it up however you want. I imagine that if a larger author wanted to do it, they could,
They could use
but
it.
I imagine that there's I imagine that there's other avenues that more established authors can use. But it was good for like a self-published author like myself who just like doesn't have a lot of those resources that like
Yeah,
publishers have.
especially,
So
yeah, definitely. Because I know I had a few issues, you know, when we reached out through email getting the EPUB, but I was able to get it through BookFunnel, no problem.
yeah,
Yeah, so any of you that, like he said, wants to sign up for the ARC, feel free to jump over. You can find his link trees on his Instagram, which will take you directly to the site where you can sign up for the ARCs. And I promise you guys, you will not regret it. It's You don't have to be a super duper horror geek to love The Roots Grow into the Earth. It is not what you would expect out of a horror book, but at the same time, you're gonna love it.
yeah. I think yeah, if you like things like Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things, Or yeah, if you like those more like classic horrors or H.P. Lovecraft, or
Yeah.
if you liked the Jim Butcher books, the Dresden Files, I think you'll find something to like in The Roots Grow into the Earth.
Yes, I absolutely agree. 100% I agree. And then so I was just kind of a little curious. I know this doesn't really have much to do with the book specifically, but sometimes I like to ask my authors a little side question just to kind of get them to know a little better. I noticed that you really enjoy cooking, along with having your two cats. So when you're not, so when you're not doing a deep dive into being a horror author, what do you like to do?
Um, yeah, I spend an inexorbitant amount of time playing video games when I'm not writing. And then I also, yeah, I really like to, I read and, bake and cook a lot. I really like making things. And like the thing I've decided to make a living off of making things is writing. But like, I just like putting things together, and cooking and baking and fermenting things just kind of like fits that bill also.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so yeah, I've like doing. I'm still pretty socially awkward, and so like the reels and videos have been hard for me to do, but the cooking videos seem to be a little easier to like get out there. So
That's good. And,
yeah,
and that's really good. It's good that you found something that you can be more comfortable with. You know what I mean? So whatever helps you to be able to kind of get over that obstacle, you know what I mean, that you're facing there. Because I know I can kind of relate in a way that, you know, what I mean, my daughter has similar, you know what I mean, where she just kind of, until she gets to know you or warms up to you, you know what I mean, she's super bashful.
yeah.
So for you to be able to find where you fit is perfect, and I love that for you. So good job, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So it's.
I go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, no. I lost the train of thought there. It's off on the
No,
horizon. Um,
no, you're fine. I was just gonna say we are getting close to our time here. My littles are home with me today, and I see them popping in and out of the room over here. So we are gonna have to get ready to close it up. But I appreciate you so much for taking time out today, for joining us. We had a good, you know what I mean, run in. And for those of you who have been following or have maybe just popped on, The Roots Grow into the Earth by Bert Lechner. ARCs will be open until the release date, which is going to be October 7th. That's going to be for paperbacks. You can pre-order ebooks now through release date. Any of the links, if you want to sign up for the ARC or if you'd like to learn information, you can jump over to Bert Lechner, his account here on TikTok, or you can find him also on Instagram where he has his link tree, that has all of the links containing any of the information about him or regarding his book. It is a collection of short horror stories, perfect for jumping into spooky season. Perfect timing for going into October. And if you guys are horror fans, if you like or you can relate to the short horror stories, kind of edge of your seat, hair standing on the back of your neck, you're going to absolutely love this. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. Check Bird out. He's an amazing person, and his stories are totally amazing. Thank you guys for jumping in and joining us. Thank you for being here, Bert.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time.
I'll see you guys. Thanks for jumping for jumping. I can't speak now. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us today, and for diving under the cover. And we will see you guys soon. Everybody have a blessed day.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Take care.